Hey everyone, I'm Tim. This is my channel 40 Times Around, and today I'm getting ready to do some maintenance on my motorcycle. I've been getting a lot of requests and questions lately about how I handle maintenance while traveling on the road. If you are new here, if you aren't familiar with who I am, I've been traveling full-time on my motorcycle for about 7 months now. I've done quite a few oil changes and other maintenance tasks in that time, but the most common one that I'm doing is oil changes. So I'm going to show you how I'm doing an oil change while I travel without a garage to do it in. Now we're going to go over a couple of different things. Number one, we're going to talk about what you're going to need to do this and where you can get it. Then we're going to talk about why you would want to do your own maintenance. Third thing, I'm going to give you 5 strategies / tips on how to go about doing this in best practices kind of thing. And after all of that, I'll show you the process real quick. Now you should already know how to do an oil change before you try doing this in a place like your campsite or behind a motel or something like that. And we're gonna get into all of that stuff right after this. Now, before we jump into all of this, I know most motorcycle trips are not going to extend and exceed the lifespan of a regular oil change. Considering my oil changes are taking place every 6,000 miles, most motorcycle trips are going to be a little bit shorter than that. But let's say you're doing 10,000 miles, you're going to have to do at least one oil change, or maybe you leave with 2,000 miles into your oil change and it's a 5,000 or 6,000 mile trip. You might want to perform an oil change during that journey. It's a good skill to have anyway, and you should know how to do it. And so that brings me to my first point, which is why you would want to perform your own maintenance on your motorcycle while you're traveling. Number one is going to be the trust factor. Now, I'm not bad-mouthing any specific motorcycle shops, but I have had some kind of sketchy situations where I brought my bike to a mechanic that I didn't know, didn't trust, had them do work on my bike, and had them give me my bike back with things not the way they were supposed to be. I've had mechanics forget to pump brakes, so there's no pressure in the brake lines and you roll into traffic with no stopping power. I've had wheel bearings put on backwards, tires installed backwards, and that is not every single time, but it does happen, and you're putting your life in someone else's hands that you don't know, you don't trust. It's not like your mechanic back at home where you've maybe hopefully built a relationship with them, built up trust, and you have somebody at home that you're comfortable giving your bike to. Because for me, I ride this thing at 80 miles an hour, sometimes faster. I'm not putting that in someone else's hands if I can avoid it. Number two, if you're like me, I'm traveling on a very tight budget right now, the money. It's not cheap to have a mechanic put their hands on your bike, no matter what they're doing. If it's an oil change, tires, brake pads, all of it. So being able to do my own oil changes, it adds up, especially for me where I'm traveling so much. And at the beginning of this trip, I was averaging 5,000 miles a month, which meant almost an oil change every single month. Considering my monthly budget was like $600, I couldn't really afford to pay a mechanic to do that for me. So money, number two. Number three, the convenience of it. You're not reliant on getting to a motorcycle shop to have them do it. You're not waiting for somebody else to do it. You don't have to make an appointment. You don't have to deal with all of that. So the convenience factor is the third reason you would want to do your own maintenance. And number four, and this is probably the biggest one, and this is why I would also recommend that you do your own maintenance at home as well, and that is so that you get to know your own motorcycle. Being down on your hands and knees underneath the bike, doing your oil change, you're going to see things differently than you would see them if you're riding, of course, right? You're going to be up close and personal, getting to know your bike. You're more likely to notice that a screw's coming loose, fasteners, whatever. You'll just notice things on your bike and you'll catch things earlier. So getting to know your own bike and, number one, noticing things when they're going wrong, but also knowing your bike in a way that if something goes wrong, you're more likely to know how to fix it or know where things are on your bike, just being familiar with the layout of everything. Next, let's talk about what you're going to need. Now, some of this is going to be fairly obvious, but I am going to give you some pointers on some things you might not be thinking of and some alternatives to things that are obvious, but maybe certain features aren't quite so obvious. So, what you're going to need. Number one, you're going to need your toolkit. That's pretty obvious, right? Something that might not be so obvious is that you're going to want to get one of these. This is a digital torque adapter. This allows you to get the correct torque on fasteners without the risk of over tightening or under tightening. And these things you can get on Amazon. I think they're about $60 to $80. I'm not 100% sure. This one's from AC Delco. I'll go ahead and leave a link to this in the description box down below. Next, of course, you're gonna need some oil. Now, I'm not gonna get into brands. I've been in the forums and I'm not going down that rabbit hole, but I choose this oil because it's convenient, because I can get it at any Walmart and a lot of other auto parts stores. Another thing you're gonna need is a funnel. These are pretty cheap. You can pick these up for like, these are pretty cheap. You can pick them up for like $1 at an auto parts store or wherever you happen to be getting anything else that you need. You might also want to have an extra little bag, plastic bag, to deal with all your trash and the dirty oil container when you're done with it. Next is an oil filter. Now I choose this one because it has a little nut on the end of it, so I don't need to bring a full-size oil filter wrench, and I just need the little socket for this, so that's pretty cool. You're also going to need some crush washers for your drain plug. I pick up an extra half dozen of those and just carry them around with me because that's the only thing I would need to go to a BMW shop for. So that way I always have them with me and I never have to go find or seek out a BMW dealership. Next is this. This is a little, basically a pan for cooking. You can pick these up for about $1, and that is your drain pan. These things are cheap, they're disposable, and they fold up really small, so you can get them on the bike without taking up a ton of space. And final thing, you're gonna want some wet wipes, something to clean your hands with when you're done. So that's everything you're gonna need. Let's go over some tips and strategies. Okay, so these are kind of strategies slash tips, and number one is going to be choose the path of least resistance. For example, sometimes I have friends in the area I happen to be traveling through. They have a garage. If I know I'm going to be needing an oil change within that range of time, I'll try to coordinate it around that. It makes it a lot easier to have a garage, privacy to work in, a nice clean shop to get everything done and taken care of. That's a lot easier than performing this task in the back of a motel while you're concerned about the hotel manager coming out and yelling at you for dumping oil all over the parking lot. So the path of least resistance, whatever is the easiest way to get this job done, is going to be your best bet. Number two is ethics, how you're going to go about recycling the oil when you're done with it. You can bring it to an auto parts store. A lot of them will recycle oil for you. You can bring it to shops that do oil changes. They'll usually recycle it for you. Most places that sell oil or perform oil changes will typically recycle your oil for you. Number three is location. You want to be a little bit stealthy about this. Most people kind of frown upon you performing an oil change in their parking lot, as in a motel, a hotel, behind a Walmart, things like that. You can kind of tuck yourself away, and I've done it in all different manner of places. If you're quick and you're efficient and you're clean about it, nobody's really going to say anything to you, but you do want to kind of be out of sight. You don't want to be, in a busy parking lot with people walking all around you while you're trying to work on your bike. That's not really practical. It's not going to be fun for you, and it's just not ideal. So location is key. You're going to want to kind of tuck yourself away. I typically don't do these at my campsite. I usually do them close to where I'm going to recycle the oil, but for this situation, I am doing it by the campsite, and this happens maybe 1 out of every 6 oil changes takes place at the campsite. Number 4 is convenience. Now, this is things like carrying crush washers so you don't have to go to a shop to get that. If that's the only thing you need at a BMW shop or a brand-specific shop, pick a bunch of them up. They're really lightweight and you can carry around a few extras so you have enough to do all the oil changes you're going to need on this trip. Same thing with oil filters. My K&N filter, for example, I can't get at Walmart. I can't get at most stores, so I have to order those online. I'll typically order 2 or 3 of them at a time because I'm doing a lot of miles. I wouldn't typically recommend that. You wouldn't need that. That's like enough for 18,000 miles. But I'll order them online on Amazon, have them shipped to a locker wherever I'm going to be. I can pick that up and do my oil change with that. So just convenience. Just think about what you can do to make things easier on yourself and make sure that you're prepared to do the tasks you're going to need to do during your trip. And number 5 is double check your work. Chances are when you're done with this oil change, you're going to jump on your bike And by the time you stop for the night, you could be 200 miles, 300 miles, 500 miles away from where you started. It's not like you're doing this in your garage at home. You can do a few laps around the block, come back to the garage and go over everything. So what you want to do is, once you leave wherever you did your oil change, just get down on your hands and knees after 100 miles, 200 miles, 300 miles, and make sure nothing's leaking, nothing's, out of the ordinary. You don't have to do that forever, just for the first day or so. Just keep an eye on things and make sure nothing's going wrong and that you did everything correctly. You don't want to be 3,000 miles away or 2,000 miles away and realize you've been dumping oil for the last week, and you're out of oil. That would not be ideal. So make sure you keep an eye on things before it gets away from you. And I do have a bonus tip, and that is use what you have. For example, things like a pair of flip-flops make great knee pads when you're kneeling down next to the bike. Also, your ground cloth from under your tent works well to keep you, at least, in this situation, there's sticks and leaves all over the ground. I don't necessarily want to be lying on that, so I'll lay my ground cloth down, and just whatever you have with you that you can use to help you make things easier, more comfortable, and more efficient. So like I said, you should already know how to perform an oil change. I am going to show you the process real quick, starting with warming up the bike, dumping the oil, tightening up the drain bolt, filling it up with oil, checking it, warming it up, all of that. Anyways, that's it for today. That's how I do an oil change around camp or while traveling. So I hope that kind of answers any questions for you, maybe gives you some tips and some things to think about before your next big motorcycle trip. And that is it for today. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And don't forget to hit the like button if you got something out of this video. That is it today. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Ride safe.